For decades, Julia Roberts has been more than a movie star. She's been the bright flame of Hollywood, the eternal pretty woman whose luminous smile and easy grace helped redefine what America means by sweetheart. She became not only the queen of romantic comedies, but also the pulse of a generation. Every look felt warm, every laugh turned into a memory. And yet behind that golden light lived fractures you couldn't see. Places where a dazzling smile hid a bruise and every graceful step landed on the broken glass of private pain. Away from red carpets and flashbulbs is a woman carrying sorrow's time never fully mended. And now, at 57, life's weather still clings to her. An icy, relentless ache that threatens the peace she worked a lifetime to build. If Julia Roberts has ever made you laugh, cry, or believe in love again, let your like be a quiet tribute to an extraordinary woman. Before the famous smile lit up Hollywood, there was a little girl living in the twilight of heartbreak, where love felt fleeting and her house echoed with silence, worry, and the kind of sadness no child should bear. Julia Fiona Roberts was born on October 28, 1967, in Smyrna, Georgia to Walter Grady Roberts and Betty Lou Bredmus, actors brave enough to defy the prejudices of the segregated DSS by opening an acting school that welcomed black and white children together. Martin Luther King Jr. and Ketta Scott King took notice. In gratitude, they paid the hospital bill when Julia was born. It was a courageous public stand. But courage outside the home couldn't save what was breaking inside it. Money was scarce, stress mounted, and by 1971, when Julia was just 4, her parents' marriage collapsed. For a wide-eyed child, that shattering was a deeper wound than any could see. Her gentle father, the safe place in her small world, moved out. He remained devoted, but his absence left a hollow nothing else could fill. Betty Lou later married Michael Mose, and the house turned from fragile to volatile. A hopeful reset hardened into a darker chapter. Raised voices, slammed doors, brief flickers of warmth. Neighbors would later recall police being called more than once. Julia and her older brother Eric and sister Lisa learned to tiptoe through their own home, never sure when another storm might break. Stability came and went. The family moved often, uprooted by tension and need, and Julia lost any sense of solid ground. Even her voice carried the strain. As a child, she stuttered, words catching in her throat as if anxiety itself were holding them back. Teachers noticed the quiet girl who avoided speaking, the one shrinking under the weight of unspoken feelings. Speech therapy helped, and later acting would too. Beneath the sorrow, resilience began to take root. In 1976, a new half-sister, Nancy, was born into the same delicate household. The addition made the fractures more visible. The Roberts children weren't growing up in Hollywood's glow, but under the dim light of financial worry, instability, and unkempt promises. A home that should have been refuge often felt like a stage where fear got the loudest lines. The little girl grew smaller and quieter. Absences mounted, and the stutter hung on her like a stone. Nothing prepared her for the cruelest blow. In 1977, when Julia was 10, her father, her tender anchor, died of throat cancer. He'd hidden his illness to spare her. And then he was gone. Silence flooded the house. Every floorboard creak sounded like absence. Yet, even as he was dying, Walter left a last kindness, a series of cassette tapes of bedtime stories so his daughter wouldn't be alone in the dark. Julia played them at night, curling around the recorder like it was his hand. She listened until the tapes wore out, as if replaying them could hold him here. They were sanctuary and a reminder that the voice she loved most now lived only on tape. School was no embrace. The very smile that would one day captivate the world got mocked as toothy. What millions would later call beauty was in those years her deepest hurt. Still, out of loss, ridicule, and fear, a spark survived. First in daydreams, and then on small stages, she found acting. A place where the trembling voice grew steady and the lonely child turned heartbreak into meaning. The grief of losing her father, the chaos at home, the sting of childhood cruelty. These carved a depth she would carry into every performance. It's how she became, not merely America's sweetheart, but an artist whose work held the weight of lived pain. From that fractured childhood, a fragile, stubborn dream carried her from Georgia to New York City. In 1985, at 17, she arrived with a small bag, a few hundred, and grit. Winter cut like a blade. Her apartment was drafty. The heater coughed more than it warmed. She stretched cheap meals for days. The ache in her stomach became routine. She slept under extra blankets, and when the subway fare was too much, walked miles through the cold with worn, thin shoes. Doors kept closing. Casting agents barely looked up. Modeling calls ended in silence. More than 200 times, she heard no. In the frozen dark, hungry and alone, she whispered one thing to herself: try again. Small breaks came first. A Claro commercial, just a flicker on TV, but it earned her a union card and a foothold. In 1987, Crime Story gave her a single-episode role. She worked through a fever and left set with special effects burns, new scars to match the old ones you couldn't see. But she didn't stop. Discipline became armor, resilience, her currency. Then came a choice no one that young should face: survival or memory. The cupboards were bare. Rent was due. In her hands was the one object that still felt like safety. Her father's old watch, its metal worn smooth by the hand she once held. Pawning it felt unthinkable, but hunger left her no options. She slid it across the pawnshop counter, tears blurring the dial as though time itself were crying. It felt like losing him again. She left with cash, and a hollow only love could fill. Years later, after the world finally knew her name, she found that same watch and bought it back. She didn't wear it as jewelry. She kept it as proof I survived and I didn't forget. The rolls began to arrive. In 1988, Mystic Pizza was small but unmistakable. Critics saw a fierce energy. Roger Ebert called her a major beauty with fierce energy, a prediction fulfilled. Yet the fight wasn't over. In 1989, Steel Magnolias cast her as Shelby, a young bride facing illness. Fragility and strength wound together. She wasn't first choice, and the set wasn't always kind. Pressure mounted. She cried between takes, but she stayed and poured every bruise of her past into the role. At 22, she won a Golden Globe and earned her first Oscar nomination. Then came the role that changed everything. In 1990, Pretty Woman turned a once bleak script into modern myth. Even after Disney softened the ending, nothing was guaranteed. The production company collapsed. She had to re-audition as if fate could vanish in a single meeting. Richard Gere hesitated until Julia slid him a note. "Please say yes." He did. Her paycheck was modest, a fraction of her co-stars, the old imbalance echoing across town. But once the camera rolled, the world saw something unforgettable. The same wide smile, mocked in school hallways, now disarmed millions. In the crimson gown, with that irresistible laugh, she didn't just act. She became a cultural event. Pretty Woman smashed box office records and rewired the zeitgeist. Wardrobes changed. Couples believed in fairy tale endings again, and Beverly Hills itself turned into a pilgrimage site. America had crowned its sweetheart, and she'd earned the crown not with ease, but with grit and light. Off-screen, fairy tales don't come with guarantees. Fame is intoxicating and merciless. She got engaged to Dylan McDermott, but love wilted under the flash of cameras. She later admitted that being adored everywhere can feel like belonging to everyone and no one at once. It was her first hard lesson. You can't cradle a private life and a public dream without sacrifice. She went home to quiet rooms, makeup still on from the day's work, searching the mirror for the girl she used to be. She refused to be trapped in glass slippers. In 1991's Sleeping with the Enemy, she fell into the terror of escaping control. The emotional toll lingered after the set emptied. Dying Young demanded a love steeped in loss. Critics were split, but audiences recognized the honesty under each scene. On Hook, Steven Spielberg spun magic for the world, while Julia Tinkerbell felt the weight of expectations pressing down. In 1994, I Love Trouble paired her with Nick Nolte. Industry whispers suggested friction, but she kept working steady and professional. Those years weren't effortless, they were crucibles. She stumbled, cried in trailers, and got back up. Each part left a scar. Each project reminded her that strength isn't born in comfort but in fire. By the late 1990s, she'd reclaimed the crown. No longer just the pretty woman, but the reigning monarch of romantic comedy. My Best Friend's Wedding, 1997, gave her a flawed, aching, utterly human character. Audiences loved her honesty. Notting Hill, 1999, blurred art and life. An international star falling for an ordinary man, echoing her own wish for simplicity. Runaway Bride reunited her with Richard Gere and rekindled that rare chemistry. These movies didn't just land. They imprinted themselves into the language of love and deepened her place in the collective memory. Then she crushed the ceiling. In 2000, Julia Roberts became Erin Brockovich. Raw, unpolished, unstoppable. For the first time in history, a woman earned $20 million for a single role. She'd started by making less than her male lead. Now she stood at the summit for every woman who'd been undervalued. The movie earned over $250 million. Critics were thunderous. The Academy handed her gold, and on